So earlier this evening, not that long ago, we had some breaking news out of New York, where a judge has now rejected Donald Trump's motion to vacate his criminal conviction on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records to cover up an alleged affair. Now, Trump's legal team had argued that his guilty verdict should be tossed out in light of the Supreme Court's ruling on immunity, claiming that testimony from former White House employees should not have been entered into evidence. But Judge Juan Merchan, who oversees the case, disagreed, saying in part, the people's use of these acts as evidence of the decidedly personal acts of falsifying business records poses no danger of intrusion on the authority and function of the executive branch. And I've been wanting to talk to people about what this all means, and I have the perfect people joining me now: Democratic Congressman and former prosecutor Eric Swalwell and former spokesperson at the Department of Justice Anthony Coley. So, Congressman, I read this as the justice system at the state level working, and this basically meaning that Trump's not exactly off the hook. But how did you read it? How should people digest what the ruling tonight means?
Well, not everyone is going to roll over for him, as we are seeing right now. As you know, the billionaire class is certainly doing that, trying to curry favor with the new president. And Americans are asking, okay, but like, what do I get out of that? And what they're seeing with this ruling is that what you get out of it is Donald Trump is still going to be treated the way anyone else would be treated. I also have my own civil case with January 6th police officers against Donald Trump for what he did on January 6th. And we're actually moving down the track. We won at the district court level on immunity. We won unanimously at the Court of Appeals. He appealed it to the Supreme Court and then withdrew that. So we're in depositions right now. And so we may be one of the only trees standing in the forest, but we're still seeking accountability. And I think it's important for people to know that that's still happening.
It's so interesting that that's such a good example. I'm so glad you shared that. Anthony, you're like the Forrest Gump of communicators in government. But, you know, one of your past jobs was to help explain legal issues to the public.
Right.
So what should people understand who are not lawyers or not former prosecutors about this ruling?
Well, the congressman said it right. Not everyone will roll over, but the ones who will, they matter. And now those are conservatives on the U.S. Supreme Court. And I have every expectation that eventually this case will make its way to the Supreme Court, and the conservatives there are going to overrule it. And I say that because the Supreme Court is fundamentally broken, Jen. I think of the fact that there are people there who don't belong right now. Neil Gorsuch. There are at least 2 justices we know that are considering cases where they should be recused. And collectively, the conservatives are ignoring decades and decades of precedent, like turning over things like Roe v. Wade, to enact a policy agenda. And the emphasis is on policy, because if you rewind the tape, if you go back to the 1980s, the conservative Republican Attorney General Edwin Meese put together a blueprint about how conservatives could use the courts to enact a policy agenda. And so now that we have conservatives on the U.S. Supreme Court in the majority, we have conservatives controlling both houses of Congress and a nominal conservative in the White House, they are not going to let Donald Trump be the only president to suffer the indignity of having a criminal conviction.
So since you're an actual former prosecutor, do you think this goes to the Supreme Court? Let me ask you a second part of this question. There are a bunch of other cases that everybody's kind of assumed will never see the light of day again, right? The Georgia case, obviously Jack Smith made his announcement. Does the ruling today change any of that or change your perception of that?
Well, I agree with Anthony. I mean, he's going to take it up to the Supreme Court. He is hell-bent on this idea that he's king. But to most Americans, the people that I grew up with, they don't want to get involved in this red team, blue team, as Anthony said, conservative court or a liberal court. They just want to know, did you run for president for the right reasons?
Right.
Did you run to help me and the cost of what, I'm paying at the grocery store? Right. Or is this just about making all of your criminal cases go away and putting your rich friends in positions of power? And if this is where he's going to put his focus, I think he's going to find he's going to lose the American people pretty quickly.
Let me ask, there's a political question I have to ask you, because he is the first person to run as a convicted felon. This now confirms he will be the first president to be a convicted felon. I'm not sure that's something that's a pride and joy for us. But the country still elected him. If you're Democrats running for office, they're off your elections this year. There are midterms people have already announced. Do you talk about that, or do you not talk about it anymore?
But the conviction, you mean?
Yeah, him being a convicted felon as president, people standing by the convicted felon as president.
You know, I think people need to focus, elected officials need to focus on the issues that matter in people's lives. And if I am a senator or even a Democratic senator in Washington, I am looking for opportunities to do that, to find that common ground, right? Like every Trump nominee is not crazy. Like trying to find the right world. There are, like Marco Rubio is not going to embarrass the country on the world stage, right? Stephen Besson, the Secretary of Treasury nominee, Doug Burgum, right, the former governor of North Dakota. These are people who reasonable Democrats should take a hard look at. And if they're qualified and they're not going to embarrass them, Democrats should find the opportunity to support them.
And if he's looking for somebody to work with on immigration, innovation, reducing crime, he's going to find the best partner in me. If he's going to let his corrupt instincts get in the way, he's going to find the strongest wall. And so it's an opportunity for him.
He's got good communication staff.
You're good. He's a good person to validate. Congressman Eric Swalwell, Anthony Coley, my old friend, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us. And coming up, yes, we are going to talk about the drone.